Beyond Reason Radio.
Oh, yes, I am back. Yes, you might be surprised to hear my voice right now because I haven't been on WFLA in a while, and I definitely have not been on a Tuesday night in a while, but this is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason, the voice of truth, in a world that is beyond reason. Yes, believe it or not, Beyond Reason Radio is on the air right now. Live, we are until 9 p.m. tonight, right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. And really, I have so much to get to. We're going to get to it really quick. Trump is holding a rally in our own state of Florida. He is in Tampa right now. He's been talking for almost an hour. He's really there to promote Ron DeSantis for governor. Ron DeSantis is obviously running for governor of the state of Florida. He's doing well in the polls. He was down in the polls initially. Then after the debate that he had with Adam Putnam, which we covered here on WFLA, he's been doing really well. And his strategy has been really interesting, and I'm going to talk about that in a sec. But before we get to that, I have to also let you know that Rob, he hasn't produced the show in a while, but Rob is here producing tonight with me. How are you, Rob?
Good. I'm glad to be back, but more happy that you're back on the air, Yaffee. Beyond Reason needs to be on WFLA more often.
It really does. We need to, what we need to do, because this is what everybody does in today's world, is we have to protest, right? We have to get protests, and we have to get signs, and we have to hold rallies, because that seems to be what everyone thinks solves the world's problems. So Let him talk. Beyond Reason protest. Part of the reason I haven't been on in a little while is because I did take a vacation to Nashville, and I actually talked about that a little bit. If I'm not on WFLA, I still record a podcast. And you can find the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Just search Beyond Reason Network. It's on Spreaker. It's on iTunes. It's on anywhere on iHeartRadio. And I've been doing some podcasts, and I talked a little bit about my trip to Nashville on the podcast. So you can check that out as well. But I appreciate you listening to the show. The first thing I want to talk about is because Trump is doing a rally right now in Tampa, saying the usual campaign stuff, and he's doing a pretty good job. But he's there mostly to promote Ron DeSantis, Congressman Ron DeSantis, who's running for governor. Now, Ron DeSantis made some news this week because he put out an ad for his run for governor. He's running in the primary right now because the primary is coming up at the end of the month. He's running against Adam Putnam, who is the agricultural commissioner of Florida. And Ron DeSantis' strategy has been pretty obvious from the beginning. And if you don't know what that is, I think you will understand what that is after this ad that he released this week. Go ahead and play it for me, Rob.
Everyone knows my husband, Ron DeSantis, is endorsed by President Trump, but he's also an amazing dad. Ron loves playing with the kids.
Build the wall.
He reads stories.
Then Mr. Trump said, "You're fired." I love that part.
He's teaching Madison to talk.
Make America great again.
People say Ron's all Trump, but he is so much more.
Big league. So good.
I just thought you should know.
Ron DeSantis for governor.
So I think you can understand what his strategy is right now. His strategy from the beginning is that he is the pro-Trump guy. If you love Trump, if you're in the Republican Party and you love Trump and you love draining the swamp and you love everything Trump is doing, then you have to put Ron DeSantis as governor of Florida because he'll be basically the Trump of the state of Florida. That's obviously his strategy. And, you know, we covered the debate on WFLA that he had with Adam Putnam that they did on Fox News. And then I talked about it right after. And it was obvious that both Adam Putnam and Ron DeSantis were both saying how much they loved Trump. They know that they can't criticize Trump too much because, one, Trump is incredibly popular in the Republican Party right now. Even if his approval ratings are not above 50% nationwide with everyone, his approval ratings among Republicans is very, very high. And both candidates know that. But two, they know that if they criticize Trump too much, Trump's going to get on Twitter and he's going to blast them. So they don't want that. So Adam Putnam originally came into this race and he came in as, I'm the Florida guy. Adam Putnam basically he has his super PAC that's called Florida Grown. He's talking about how he's been in Florida forever, that he's going to put Florida first. Yeah, that sounds familiar. And all of this stuff. He thought his winning strategy was going to be Florida, Florida, Florida. I'm the Florida guy. Ron DeSantis said, yeah, I love Florida, but my strategy is Trump, Trump, Trump. I'm the Trump guy. And it seems that Ron DeSantis had the right strategy so far. He's winning in the polls. Part of the problem is Adam Putnam did not do well in the debate. I mean, he did okay. I didn't think he did terrible, but he didn't do as well in the debate as many had thought against Ron DeSantis. And he's put out some misleading ads against Ron DeSantis about, the fair tax, not calling it the fair tax, saying Ron DeSantis wants to raise taxes. And a lot of people called him out on that, and that's hurt Ron DeSantis a lot. But being pro-Trump, Trump, Trump is Ron DeSantis' strategy, and it makes a lot of sense because you have to remember, this is the primary. This isn't the general. Rick Scott has kind of moved away from Trump a little bit. Rick Scott's not at the rally right now with President Trump. And people are wondering why. It's because Rick Scott's not worried about a primary. He's worried about the general. So when Ron DeSantis wins this primary, he's probably not going to be as pro-Trump as he was. Not saying he'll be anti-Trump, don't misunderstand me, but he's going to shift his focus a little bit probably in the general. But right now in the primary, it's a smart move because no matter what Trump's overall approval rating is, right now Trump is very popular in the Republican Party, and he's extremely popular among Republicans in the state of Florida. So pretty smart strategy by Ron DeSantis, and actually the ad I thought was pretty funny. So I want to get into some other things that there's so much we have to talk about, and I'm going to get into some other things that we're gonna talk about as well. Over the weekend, I watch all the Sunday shows. I actually don't watch them. Meet the Press, State of the Union, Face of the Nation, Fox News Sunday, all that. I don't really watch them. I listen to the podcasts of them because I like to listen to them, and then I can do other things while I'm listening. But Rudy Giuliani, who is Trump's lawyer right now, and by the way, I don't think Rudy is really Trump's lawyer. I think has a title of Trump's lawyer. I think he's just the mouthpiece. I think when it comes to the actual lawyering, I think there's other people doing that. I think Trump just put Rudy as, you need to go out and you're going to be the mouthpiece for me in the media. Now, Rudy got into some hot water over the weekend because what happened is Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, he released a tape of him and Trump implying that Trump knew about a payment to a former Playboy model he wanted to cover up all that. But then Michael Cohen, Trump's former attorney, came out and said Donald Trump, the president, knew about that meeting between Trump Jr. and the Russians and that one Russian Veselinskaya or whatever the heck her name was. And that even though President Trump said he didn't, that President Trump knew about that meeting. So that created a whole bunch of controversy, and Rudy was all over the Sunday shows. And then on Monday, Rudy came out and he said something else that caused a lot of controversy. He was on CNN, and this is what he said there.
4 months, they're not going to be colluding about Russians, which I might even know if that's a crime, colluding about Russians.
Okay.
You start analyzing the crime. The hacking is the crime.
That certainly is the original
crime. Well, the president didn't hack.
Of course not. That's the original.
He didn't pay them for hacking.
And as you know, it has led other places. The meeting with the Russians.
If you got the hacked information from the Russians here at CNN and you played it, would you be in jeopardy of going to jail? Of course not.
So he basically come out and he has his new strategy. Not only did Trump not collude with the Russians, but collusion's not a crime. Now, he's not the first one to say this. Alan Dershowitz has been saying this for months, that the Mueller probe really has nothing on Trump. And if they did, collusion is not a crime. So they can't go after him for quote-unquote collusion because that in itself is not a crime, which is why one of the reasons why the Mueller probe has nothing on Trump. Alan Dershowitz has been saying this for months, like I said. But he came out and said collusion's not a crime. And then President Trump tweeted out shortly after that, collusion is not a crime. This is Trump's tweet. Collusion is not a crime, but that doesn't matter because there was no collusion except by crooked Hillary and the Democrats. So they're focusing all on that. And then Rudy got into some hot water again because Rudy had suggested before anyone else put it out there that there was a second meeting between President Trump and Donald Trump Jr. about meeting with the Russians in Trump Tower and all of that. And then Rudy backed off of that. Here's Rudy on Fox News kind of backing away from that. Here it is.
There wasn't another meeting that has been leaked but hasn't been public yet. Okay. That was a meeting, an alleged meeting, 3 days before. According to Cohen, or according to the leak, he says there was a meeting with Donald Jr., with Jared Kushner, with Paul Manafort, with Gates, and possibly two others, in which they, out of the presence of the president, discussed the meeting with the Russians. We checked with their lawyers, the ones we could check with, which were 4 of the 6. That meeting never, ever took place. It didn't happen.
So he was backing off on that. Nobody even knew about that potential meeting. I guess somebody was going to leak it out there, but Giuliani leaked it first. There's a whole bunch of controversy. Giuliani backed off of that. But here's the reason why, the real reason why I am bringing all of this up. Because I hear a lot of people telling Trump, telling Rudy, saying, shut up, stop talking about it. Why do you continue to put Rudy on these Sunday shows? Trump, why do you continue to tweet about this? Trump, what are you doing? And they're saying it's because Trump is scared and Trump is defensive. Trump, since Saturday, actually since Friday, Trump has tweeted about the Mueller probe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. Now, some of those were he tweeted all at once, but that's 7 tweets since Friday about the Mueller probe. I am becoming more and more convinced, and I know this sounds crazy, and a lot of Republicans don't like this, but I am becoming more and more convinced that this is an actual strategy by Trump, by the Trump administration, by Rudy Giuliani to keep attention on this Mueller probe. I know that's crazy. A lot of people think Trump doesn't like the Mueller probe. He's frustrated by it. He wants attention elsewhere. He thinks it's a distraction. But the more and more I watch Giuliani, the more and more I look at Trump's tweets, the more and more I hear from the administration, it almost seems to me that President Trump wants the attention on this probe, wants to continue to push out this controversy, wants to continue to have Rudy Giuliani bringing it up on the Sunday shows. He wants the attention on it. I don't understand why. I really don't. I wish if somebody has that answer, call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. I really want to know because I'm becoming more and more convinced every day. Because every time something comes up, Trump tweets 10 times about the Mueller probe. And Rudy's on 12 different television shows talking about it. And the administration is talking about it. Why is this the strategy of the Trump administration to keep the attention on this? A lot of people think it's bad. He doesn't like it. I'm starting to become convinced it's the other way. That he wants the attention on this, maybe to distract from other things. Maybe he thinks that if he continues to tweet about it and Rudy continues to be on the offensive about it, that it will fire up the Trump base and the Trump base really likes it. Maybe Trump just likes the attention. I'm not sure I completely understand. I want someone to explain this to me. Please explain it, because there's a lot of people that have been saying for weeks that Trump is very upset about this probe and that Trump doesn't like where this probe is going, that Trump wishes it would go away, that Trump wants to fire Rosenstein, that he wants to fire Mueller. But I swear I'm seeing the opposite by the Trump administration on this. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680 where standard message and data rates apply. We got a couple calls coming in. We're going to get your calls after the break. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. Yes, we are finally back here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. But if you miss any of the show, you can catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Just search for Beyond Reason Network. Not only do I post this show there, but I also post my podcast that I just record, and I also post the Florida Roundtable, which I co-host, and I also post Moment of Clarity, which is a Christian show that I also produce and co-host. So a lot of different options for you on the Beyond Reason Network podcast stream, anywhere podcasts are available. Got some calls coming in. I asked the question before the break. Why is it the Trump administration wants to keep the focus on the Mueller probe, wants to keep the focus on the Mueller investigation? Because Rudy was on all the Sunday shows over the weekend, on more than one. And then on Monday, he was all over it. And then Trump was tweeting about it all weekend. Why? If they hate it so much, if they think it's so damaging to their administration, why do they keep focusing on it? I think it's a strategy. I'm not sure why, but I think it's a strategy. Now, I wanted to play a voice of reason of the day on this, though, because there's been a lot of talk on whether Trump knew about that meeting with Donald Trump Jr. and the Russian about dirt on Hillary Clinton. The left has been focusing on that a lot, thinking that's the thing that's going to get Trump, and that Trump is lying that he said he didn't know about it. Honestly, I'll say this. I think it's incredibly possible and likely that President Trump did know about it. I know a lot of Trump supporters won't like me saying that. I think it's totally possible and likely, like I said, that Trump knew about that meeting. Here's the thing, though. He's been so defensive against it that it makes him look worse now if it's found out that he knew about it. But him knowing about it, is it really as big of a deal as everyone's making it out to be? I heard a comment from columnist Peggy Noonan on Meet the Press on Sunday, and I thought she made a really interesting point on this that I think a lot of people are not thinking about, and I think she's actually right about this. Here's what she said.
One of the things I'm curious about is where the heck does this go? You have a sense as you watch the story that more tapes will come, more testimony, more this, an email, whatever, and we'll find out, yes, the president kind of knew about the Trump Tower meeting. Someone wanted to share information against Hillary Clinton. He says, sure, let me know how it goes. If that is true, where does that get you? What is our end point there? That doesn't prove criminality. It proves poor judgment. It proves a lack of sophistication within his campaign organization. Normally, these Russians would come in off the street and they'd meet with extremely low-level people.
These guys got right.
Top-level people. Oh, my gosh, it's so, it's out of a Daniel Silva novel. It's so unsophisticated.
That's high praise.
Which is what I keep, it is high praise. But that's what I keep thinking of it as. But still, if the moment comes when we find out Trump knew about this meeting, what does that mean?
I think that's a great question. Because Peggy Noonan is basically saying, yeah, he probably knew about it, probably just heard, hey, this person says they have dirt on Hillary Clinton. Trump says, okay, find out what it is, and that's about it. That this is really one of the most unorganized campaigns, and this idea that he was actively, consistently colluding with Russia and the Russian government and these hackers and all this stuff, that this, even if he knows about this meeting, doesn't prove that at all. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. Let's go to Sean in Orlando. Sean, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, so I believe that Trump is a pretty big master tactician, in my opinion. It seems like what he's doing is kind of teeing the whole thing up that the Democrats have built into this massive golf ball, essentially, of this huge deal. And just like you said, it's not that big of a deal. So with the trial coming on and all of this... The
Manafort trial, you mean?
Yeah, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this stuff happening, I think they're bringing it to the forefront so that when it fails miserably, he can kind of point to the entire Democratic Party and say, hey, you guys made this a big deal, and look, it's nothing. And then with what you were just now talking about, if he really did know about the meeting, which I believe he also did as well, then all of those little details can just also be swept away because the collusion never happened, and Mueller's entire purpose is then nullified at that point.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that's an interesting take. So you agree with me, though, that it seems to be a strategy to keep the attention on this investigation?
I don't think that anything that Trump does in this administration is kind of random. The Secretary of State, when he was on trial in front of the Senate, it seemed, the other day, he pretty much made clear that Trump is in charge of all administration functions. And so I don't believe that this is just a game and they're going out there and he tweets erroneously. I think that they're setting it up for a reason because there is no collusion.
I'm starting to think that too. I mean, at first, and I appreciate your call, Sean, I really do. At first, I thought it was all just erroneous, but it seems to me now a strategy to keep the focus on what's going on here. So I find it fascinating. Let's take another call. Let's go to Paul in Winter Springs. Paul, what's your take on this?
Well, it kind of does tell. I agree with you, and I agree with Sean, the previous caller. I think it's a brilliant strategy. I agree that President Trump does nothing by accident. I think that Donald Trump is using this Russia collusion farce. In my humble opinion, it's a farce. He's using it to play the David versus Goliath card. I think that he knows that there was no Russian collusion, and he wants this to be in the forefront. Just like you have said, I could not agree with you more. He's using this, and in my opinion, it's a brilliant strategy for him. It's David versus Goliath. He wants this to be in the media through the midterms and up to the 2020 election so he can continually point to himself and say, look at me, I'm the little guy. I'm a common man who took on this big evil shadow government. What do they call it? The dark state or the deep state?
I just wanted to say it's really interesting you bring that up because I'm not sure I agree with you that it's a brilliant strategy, but I will say this. Trump at the rally just like an hour ago, not even an hour, half an hour ago, he talked about how he basically created the narrative again that he had not visited Washington, D.C. that much before he was elected. He kind of put out this whole thing again that he's the outsider. He's coming in to drain the swamp. That was a big narrative in his speech just less than an hour ago. So you might be on to something that he's just trying to continue that perception that he's the outsider.
Yes, sir. I don't. Maybe using brilliant wasn't the right word. It would definitely be unconventional for someone to take something like this on and use it to their advantage. But I really don't see what other choices President Trump would have than to try to turn this around and use it to his advantage, because it seems to me so far everything else that he's done has been so unconventional that it leaves both the left and the Republicans, it leaves the entire swamp. He seems like he's 3 steps ahead of them around every turn, and all they can do is scratch their head and throw rocks at the shiny star in the sky.
Interesting.
I agree with you 100%. Mm-hmm.
All right. I appreciate your call, Paul. I really do. So, I have 2 callers that agree that this is some kind of strategy. I don't know how well it's going to work, but I was very doubtful of Trump's strategies in the beginning. I'm not as doubtful anymore because sometimes it works. Sometimes it does. 407-916-5400, text to 23680. So there's a study out that shows how much the Medicare for All plan, Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan, would actually cost. Oh, the number is quite something. And we'll get to that next. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
So, the late Charles Krauthammer, who I miss a lot, he was often, and Rob, you probably remember this when I was doing the show, I tried to find voices of reason on the show to play, and I would often use Krauthammer, who columnist for years, was on Fox News as well.
Sure.
I would use him as my voice of reason of the day a lot.
And it really worked because he was the voice of reason. He looked at it in a different way. Kind of like you, Yaffee. You look at things very differently, but usually on point.
Thank you. I'm nowhere even close to Charles Krauthammer, but I appreciate that.
Give it 30 years.
Okay. But unfortunately, he died just a few weeks ago, and it was really sad to hear that. But I was thinking about him today because it was just over a year ago when Krauthammer was on Fox News Special Report, and he said this about the future of health care in the U.S. Here it is.
I think historically speaking, we're at the midpoint. We had 7 years of Obamacare, a change in expectations, And I would predict that in less than 7 years, we'll be in a single-payer system. But the irony is, in the end, I think Obamacare wins the day because it changed expectations. Look at the terms of the debate. Republicans are not arguing the free market anymore. They have sort of accepted the fact that the electorate sees health care as not just any commodity. It's not like purchasing a steak or a car. It's something that people now have a sense the government ought to guarantee.
That's right.
So he basically makes the prediction, and this was when Obamacare repeal was being debated in Congress, and they could not get it passed. And Krauthammer basically said that as a result of that, and as of the result of the public mood in the country, we are about maybe 7 years away from single-payer healthcare system in this country. And I basically said, it seems that way because we've given into the premise that it's a government's job to do these things. Well, there might be one thing that gets in the way of that prediction. And here it is. Bernie Sanders has put out a Medicare for All plan, the socialist Bernie Sanders. According to a study by the libertarian-leaning Mercatus Center at George Mason University, that plan would cost $32 trillion over 10 years.
Oh.
So just a drop in the bucket. No big deal. $32 trillion. Yes, that's over 10 years. That means it would be $3.2 trillion a year. Just so you know, our whole federal spending last year was, a little over $4 trillion. So it would raise the yearly federal budget by over $3 trillion. Now, whatever you think of healthcare in this country, whatever you think of, if you want a socialist healthcare system, I'm telling you right now, it is going to be hard to sell the American people on that amount of money. It just is. It's going to be incredibly difficult to sell the American people that we need to spend another $3 trillion a year. I'm not saying it's impossible. The Democrats are going more and more left. They're pushing this. Unfortunately, there are way too many people in this country now that believe that that's the solution. But I think you're just going to have a very hard time, especially with the government spending out of control as it is. And even the Democrats are admitting that government spending is out of control right now because, Trump and Republicans are in control. So now the Democrats care, of course. And, of course, now the Republicans don't care, which is annoying. But I just think it's going to be really hard to sell that point. Now, Bernie Sanders originally said, that's a misleading study. It's funded by the Koch brothers. But believe it or not, that's not the only study that has said this. In fact, there was another healthcare study that was done by a left-leaning outlet that basically predicted the same thing. It was the Urban Institute that came out with the exact same number in 2016 when they did a study on Bernie Sanders' plan. So it's not just, this is just a right-leaning study. No, a left-leaning study. That's how much it's going to cost. So Bernie Sanders originally tweeted out that this was a misleading stat. But now all of a sudden, Bernie Sanders and the left and the socialists have a new strategy. They're basically coming out now and admitting, yes, it's going to cost that much. Yes, that's about how much it will cost. But what they're saying now is that that's a good thing that it costs that much. That's actually a bargain. In fact, I have Vox.com, a headline here from the liberal leftist site Vox.com. This is the headline. It says Bernie Sanders' $32 trillion Medicare for All plan is actually kind of a bargain. That's the headline. I think this is going to be a tough sell, but it's very interesting that they're coming out and they're basically admitting now this is how much it's going to cost. So why are they doing this? What is this strategy? What's going on here? Well, Bernie Sanders actually put out a video on his Twitter page explaining why this study is actually good news. And what Bernie Sanders says here is the same old socialist argument that we have been hearing since Karl Marx was alive and since Stalin was around or whatever. It's the same socialist argument. And I'll tell you what I mean in a sec, but this is what Bernie Sanders said in a video he posted on his Twitter page.
Let me thank the Koch brothers, of all people, for sponsoring a study that shows that Medicare for All would save the American people $2 trillion over a 10-year period. I suspect that that is not what the Koch brothers intended to do, but that is what is in the study of the Mercatus Center, an organization that is significantly funded by the Koch brothers. At a time when the United States spends far more per capita on healthcare than any other country on earth, almost 18% of our GDP. A Medicare for all healthcare system would save the average family significant sums of money. It will do that by substantially reducing the administrative costs now taking place as a result of the billing, bureaucracy, and insatiable greed within the insurance industry, whose main function in life is not to make people well, but to make stockholders incredibly rich. If we can get rid of the profiteering, the dysfunction, and the incredible waste within the current healthcare system, if we get rid of the advertising and the high-priced compensation packages of healthcare executives, we can save hundreds of billions of dollars each and every year.
So there's a lot to unpack there, but basically the point that the left is coming out with now is that if we go to a completely run government healthcare system, it'll save us money because even though the government will be spending a lot more money, the American people as a whole will be spending less money. What's the argument? It's the same, and it was all over that ad. He was talking about it at the end. It's the same old argument that the government, that if you put an industry in the hands of the government knows how to run it more efficiently and more cost effectively than the private sector. That's basically what he's saying. That, well, yes, it'll cost a lot of money, but we'll run it better than the private sector. We'll do such a better job. The federal government will do such a great job that you'll actually save money because we'll cut all these costs and that the government will just run it so efficiently and it'll be great utopia for everyone. This is the same socialist argument that socialists have been arguing for years, that the problem with economies in the world is that it's greedy corporations who just want profits. And because they're greedy and want profits, they charge way too much and it hurts people. And what we have to do is get rid of evil corporations and profits and put it in the hands of the government because the government cares about you and the government will do it so much better than you. Now, the history of the economies of the world show that's not true, that the reason why we have the most prosperous, richest economy in the history of mankind is because we have a free enterprise system, that capitalism does a better job of allocating resources, not the government, that the government is incredibly inefficient at doing this. But there you go. Why do you think the government would save money over time? It kind of made me laugh because I don't even believe the government would save money over time. I believe this $32 trillion is actually low. I believe that it costs, especially after 10 years, would start expanding because every government program always does. The costs of it always go up exponentially, always costs more than they say originally. But the reason why they think they're going to save money, how are they going to do that? They're going to do it by rationing. That's how they're going to do it. They're going to cut care. You're going to have government bureaucrats deciding who gets what care. So let's say the premise is right, that the private sector, that the American people right now spend more on healthcare than if the government ran it. At least now I'm spending my own money and it's my choice and I can spend it where I want to. So if I don't like a doctor I'm going to, I can choose a different doctor. If I don't like the care I'm getting somewhere else, I can go somewhere else. And if that somewhere else costs more money, I might be willing to pay more money because I have the choice to go somewhere else. When you have a completely run government system, those choices are gone. It is no longer up to you. It's no longer up to the private doctors. It's no longer up to a free system. It's up to a centrally controlled government. It made me laugh in that video when he said, oh, well, if the government runs it all, we'll cut administrative costs. We'll cut the bureaucracy. Are you kidding me? When has the government ever been good at cutting bureaucracy and administrative costs? There's no way. I don't see that as possible. So it's the same old socialist argument. Now, there is another thing that you looked like, Rob, did you have something you wanted to say? You're like,
oh, well, I just want to make jokes about it. You're so serious, but you're getting worked up. Because, I mean, those points that you're making are so right on. It's so true.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Bernie Sanders, you got to take him with a grain of salt. If you go socialism, I mean, the video is just made for the millennials. You hear that music behind there? You can see him in a little rave cap.
It really is.
And it really is. I mean, what's next? Cheeseburgers and fries for everybody. I mean, it just goes on and on. But you're right on. I mean, the serious points you're making are so... we will have no choice. It's just right down the road to communism. Say it like it is. That's communist. They call it socialist just to be nice, but come on, you're right on with that.
I appreciate your comments on that, but you're right. But the problem is a lot of people are buying into this now. More and more people in this country are buying into that argument. And it's unbelievable to me that they don't see the big picture. And the big picture, and see, what's really interesting is there's a split with the Democrat Party and the left. You have the Paul Krugmans of the world, the New York Times columnist Paul Krugman. He says that what the Democrats really want is not a single-payer system, but what they want is basically you'll still have private insurance, but you'll also have a government system, like a public option, basically. For those who can't afford the private system, they'll get free government insurance, but you'll still have both. But what Bernie Sanders, and this is a very important point that I don't think a lot of people realize. What Bernie Sanders and the Democratic Socialists, like that new one in New York, who just won the primary up there, what's her name again? I always get her name wrong.
Ocasio
Alexandria Cortez, or something like that. What they want, and this was another piece on Vox.com that laid all this out by the Democratic Socialists. The Democratic Socialists and Bernie Sanders do not want a system where private insurance still exists and you have a public option. What they want is to make it illegal for private healthcare insurance to exist in this country. Go look it up. The Democratic Socialists of America, their plan is not only to have a government system, but to have what's called a single payer system where it would be illegal to have any private healthcare insurance. That's what they want. That's how radical their plan is. So not only do they want a new government entitlement program, but they want to take away your options. And that's not only options for patients, but options for doctors. I have a good friend of mine who's just about to finish his residency. He's my age. He's 33. He's been in he went to college to get his bachelor's degree, then went to medical school, then he had years of residency, and he's at another residency. All these years of schooling, all these student loans he's had to take out, all this money he's had to pay out, all this hard work he's had to do. Could you imagine being a doctor like him? You finally get into the field and then, oh, no, now we're just doing a government system. And you have no choice to be in a government system. Could you imagine being him? Do you think that's what he wants? No, none of these doctors want that. They want to be able to make a decent living, and they should because they've earned it. But that would be taken away if we went to a complete government system, and what you would have is you would take away the incentive for really smart people in this country to become doctors. So that's another problem you would create. There's so many problems with it, but it's the same old socialist argument that I hear over and over and over again, and it won't stop with healthcare. It'll be something else. Eventually, they're going to go after oil, they're going to go after energy, and they're going to say energy needs to be taken over by the government because we'll do it more efficiently. We'll do it better. Do you really believe the government's going to do it better? No. And the idea that they're going to cut administrative and bureaucratic bureaucracy is just laughable to me. 407-916-5400. Text 23680. So something that did not get a lot of attention this week that I wanted to highlight is Jeff Sessions. The Attorney General Jeff Sessions made an announcement that he's basically starting a religious liberty task force in the Justice Department. What's that all about? We'll talk about that next, and we have much more. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Whew, it's been a fast show already. We only have a few minutes left, but I appreciate you joining me. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Been on since 8 p.m. If you miss any of the show, make sure to check the podcasts anywhere podcasts are available. Just search for Beyond Reason Network. So Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who has been under hot water with a lot of the Trump supporters and with Trump himself, even though Trump refuses to fire him, even though he doesn't like him. I mean, he's like, you don't like him, just get rid of him. He actually did something I think is very important this week. He made an announcement about a new task force that he is starting. He made these remarks during a religious liberty summit at the Department of Justice earlier this week, and this is what he said.
Let's be frank. A dangerous movement, undetected by many, but real, is now challenging and eroding a great tradition of religious freedom. There can be no doubt. It's no little matter. It must be confronted intellectually and politically and defeated. This past election, and much that has flowed from it, gives us a rare opportunity to arrest these trends and to confront them. Such a reversal will not just be done with electoral victories, however, but by intellectual victories. We've gotten to the point where courts have held that morality cannot be a basis for law, where ministers are fearful to affirm, as they understand it, Holy Writ from the pulpit, and where one group can actively target religious groups by labeling them hate groups.
So basically, he has come up with this, and I think he's exactly on the money there, with the Religious Liberty Task Force, and that's to make sure that we protect religious liberty and that the Justice Department has an active role on that because, well, I just want to start by saying this. I'm a strong Christian, as everyone knows. It's the core of who I am. I am very grateful. Really, I'm grateful every day that I live in this country. Because in this country, for the most part, we still have the freedom to practice our religion freely, especially when you look at the history of the world, and especially if you look at a lot of the rest of the world today. We still have a lot to be grateful for. You know, sometimes I've used the word persecution, that Christians are persecuted. I think that was probably too strong of a word. I don't think Christians are really persecuted in this country in a really big way. But there is no doubt that there are movements in this country right now to hurt Christianity, to attack Christianity. One group that I talk about all the time is the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Now, the title there tells you everything. There is no such thing in the Constitution as freedom from religion. That was never the intention of the founder. It was never the intention of this country. It's freedom of religion, that you have the ability to practice your religion freely. You have movements in this country right now that want to subjugate Christianity into completely private spheres, where you can have your private beliefs, but when you are out in a public setting or you're out in the workforce or whatever, you are no longer allowed to practice your religion. That is the goal of a lot of movements, I believe, in this country. You see it all the time in our schools. And, you know, I'm not saying that we should have religious classes in public school or anything like that, but when you have a football coach who merely says a prayer before a game and some of the players join him, and you have lawsuits against that football coach, you have an effort in this country to subjugate Christianity and to put it into a sphere, to put fear in Christians so they don't want to practice a religion publicly. When a coach says a prayer like that, all he's doing is practicing his religion publicly. He's not forcing anyone else to believe in his religion. He's not forcing anyone else to participate in his religion. All he is doing is practicing it, which is what the founders wanted, but a lot of groups in this country don't want that. And there are some companies in this country that want to have a Christian basis for their company, and a lot of people have a problem with that. And there's no doubt in my mind that there is a movement, and it's one of those slippery slope things, but there is a movement to make Christianity less and less a part of our culture, less and less a part of our country, less and less a part of what goes on in public. Another thing that Jeff Sessions said, he said the American culture has become less hospitable to people of faith. I think there's no doubt about that. There's still, and a lot of it depends where you are in the country, but there's no doubt when you look at the pop culture, or you look at Hollywood, or you look at the music industry, or you even look, in the universities or in the schools or in the news media, there is no doubt that Christianity and being a Christian in this country is less hospitable than it used to be. I'm not saying we're persecuted to the extent that, people in the Middle East are persecuted, or people in China are persecuted, or people in North Korea or Cuba are persecuted. But what I'm saying is that if you believe that Christianity has the influence in our culture that it used to have, I think you're incredibly naive, because I just don't think that's true. There is a movement, and that's why it's important what Jeff Sessions is doing here, because Jeff Sessions is saying, look, it is a part of our constitutional right to have freedom of religion, to be able to practice your religion without the fear of government getting in your way. Because that's what a lot of these groups want to do. They want the government to interfere with you being able to practice your religion freely. And we're seeing it in Jeff Sessions, in that audio cut I played, laid out a lot of different examples of it. And I think he's exactly right. And that was just an interesting point that I wanted to make on that. Jeff Sessions has done a lot of good. I know a lot of Trump supporters don't like him for certain things, and I know President Trump doesn't like him for certain things, but I really don't think a lot of that is Jeff Sessions' fault. I think Jeff Sessions has done a lot of good. So, we're almost done with the show. There was like a ton of stuff that I didn't get to.
You got to get back to 2 hours. I mean, you could do 2 hours easy.
I was going to talk about Trump talking about the government shutdown, Trump wanting to meet with the Iranians. There's a whole bunch. The 3D printable guns I didn't get to.
It's all beyond reason.
I have a whole stack of stuff.
Great topic selection.
But maybe I'll do a podcast tomorrow, later this week, and I'll record it. Make sure to check out the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Like the Facebook page. Follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. And I appreciate you joining me tonight. I'll be back on with Bud tomorrow morning talking about the Trump rally and more. And thanks to Rob as well. And I'll catch you guys next time.